That's not correct. Welcome back to Mixed Media. Let me get this right. There we go. Welcome back to Mixed Media. That was an almost perfectly smooth entry onto the scene. But we are back after a little bit of a hiatus. I've got a lot to update you guys on, for sure. Life has changed a lot for me, and that's why we're kind of gone for a little bit. But we're a weekly show every Monday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And what we do is we talk about anything pretty much art-related. We talk about philosophy of art, pop culture, reviewing specific pieces, business, and all kinds of things that you would want to know as an artist, pretty much. We do it from our own perspectives. And yeah, that's what we like to do. We'd like to do it live so that you guys can comment and be with us as we talk about these things. It's always fun when we have a little bit of an audience to join in on the conversation. With that, we'll introduce ourselves. So my name is Irving Nestor. I'm a media entrepreneur and filmmaker.
Hi, I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and a media composer.
And I'm Nathan Nestor. I'm a game developer and 3D modeler.
Sweet. And before we continue, I'd like to give a shout out to two people, Rob Sharma and 909 Crime, for supporting us on Locals. And you can join them if you go to mixedmediapodcast.com. There's a support link there, or you can go to mixedmedia.locals.com. And for $5 a month, you can help us to grow the podcast. And it really does help a lot. It gives us more options for how we get things out to people, and helps things get edited quicker. So there you go. Yeah, so how were you guys' weeks?
Well, fine. Nothing notable.
Yeah, I started school, so that's interesting, I guess. first podcast episode at school.
Well, I should have said, how the last, 2 or 3 weeks. That probably is more accurate, since we've been on. I know. Were you in California already last time we were on, Ben, or... Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Sweet. Anything in the past 2 weeks, or nothing really?
Nothing that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah. For me, I'm going to be talking about most of the stuff that's happened to me, just in a casual sort of chatting fashion. It's going to be a little bit more, I guess, conversational. It's kind of fun to do those from time to time in my segment, so I won't go too much into it, but what I'll be talking about in my segment is this crazy move I did from NYC to the Anthracite region in Pennsylvania. So I'll be talking about that during my segment. It was quite hellish of a move, that's for sure. But we're here now. How about any news or anything like that?
Yeah, I have some news. Some cyberpunk news. So yes, Cyberpunk 2077 seems like it's getting some more content updates. I'm not really sure what the state of the game is in terms of its bugginess. I'm not really sure if it's mostly been ironed out or it's still kind of a mess or somewhere in between. But yeah, that's happening. And let me just make sure I got this right. Yes, and there is a possible Cyberpunk 2077 sequel is being outlined. I don't know exactly what that means according to the article. They didn't really give much information about how this is known or something like that. But yeah, that's all. I'm a bit skeptical. I don't know. I don't know if there'll be Cyberpunk 2077 2, but yeah.
Yeah, how long has it been since that game came out?
It's been a couple of years, right? I want to guess 2 years. Let's see. Cyberpunk 2077 came out in 2020. Yeah, 2 years.
Huh. Okay. Cool. How about you, Ben?
The most significant thing I noticed was at D23 they announced. Well, first, I'm not sure whether they announced the film itself or not, or whether the film's already been mentioned before, but apparently, if they have, I don't know, I hadn't heard of it. Disney's making a new, Disney film with the same directors, I think, as Frozen. It's a new movie called Wish, which is about how the star which you wish upon, whatever, their logo, the story of the star. But
it's really random.
They're really, I guess, in this day and age, if you want to come up with a new idea, like, there are no new ideas, but if you're going to come up with a new idea, it's not going to be very not going to be the greatest idea. Obviously, a film could be great, whatever. I don't know, but just the premise sounds a little odd to me. It sounds a little self-serving. But apparently, they announced the big news, other than, I guess, that the film exists or will exist, is that some singer-songwriter named Julia Michaels is writing all the music, or at least writing all the songs for it. So I didn't know who that was, because I don't pay any attention to pop music, really. I have no, I don't see much reason to. So anyway, apparently she's a somewhat popular singer-songwriter. I listened to her most popular song, which is called Issues. And, it stood out to me, it absolutely not at all from any, generic pop song that is out there right now, but that's the direction Disney wants to go. It should be interesting. Interesting choice for a songwriter for a big Disney film.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, on my end, I was so busy, I had no idea what was going on, except I noticed the announcement of The Little Mermaid, because that was like a big thing come out. I didn't even know it was happening. This kind of goes in the theme of never make anything new, just remake everything old. And just, I don't know why. I guess the thing is, like, just who's still going to these things? Because, like, after however many mediocre remakes of these animated movies, I'm not sure who is being duped into watching the next one. Who doesn't want to be duped, if you get what I'm saying? Because, like, most of these films, like, actually every single one of them, we talk about Aladdin, talk about The Lion King, we talk about Beauty and the Beast, all of them mixed reception, particularly from the audience. Audiences thought that it was not worth the money putting in. But then you come out with The Little Mermaid. It's like, somehow, this is going to be different. It's not going to be different. It's probably going to be just as mediocre. I don't even know, like, is Sebastian going to be in it? Like, do you want Sebastian to be in this movie? Like, I don't know the answer to that question. Like, can you have The Little Mermaid without Sebastian? But then, do you want Sebastian to be in there in live action? This is a problem. And
how else? Like, literally, you know how much I love the music of that film. But what do you do with that film if you don't have Under the Sea and Kiss the Girl?
Exactly.
And you don't have Le Poisson, trying to turn Sebastian into seafood. Like, that's, like, what other musical numbers are there? There's Ursula, and, like, what part of your world? Like, there's not much else to that film, music song wise, anyway.
Yeah, no, seriously. The CG I saw in the trailer was already terrifying. But luckily, I guess most of the movie takes place above ground, so I guess we don't have to see that. Like,
but that's not even true to the most of it's underwater.
Is it?
Yeah.
I haven't seen the film in like a billion years, so I don't know.
Yeah, she's like on land for like 10 minutes of the film's runtime.
Oh. Okay, like, so that's bad.
I don't know. There's a trailer out for. I kind of want to see this.
Yes. The headlining thing is that Ariel is a black character.
Well, that's been discussed for years.
Yeah.
That's been the thing since they announced this years ago, and to some level of controversy. I don't know how much really, or how much of it just been blown up, but yes, that's been like the only thing anybody's known about it at all.
Yes. At first, when I read the headline, I thought it was Halle Berry was playing Ariel, because her name is Halle Bailey, and just every time I read it, I was like, Halle Berry. Halle Berry's gonna play little Ariel in Little Mermaid. That was the most bizarre image in my head. But no, it's Halle Bailey. I don't honestly like that. I don't think that's actually relevant to people. I think so. In the comments section of the trailer, you'll see some interesting things because Disney tried to delete all the negative comments. Never works, by the way. Don't delete the negative comments. Just take it, And there's a meme now that's there where people are saying positive things, and those are all the top comments are positive things, and it's kind of really hilarious. But that's what happens when you do that kind of stuff. People just make it take a life of its own. It's the Barbra Streisand effect. That's what it's called, right? The Streisand effect.
I've heard of that. I don't know what that is, though.
It's basically when you try to remove controversy by addressing it, but the fact that you addressed it has given a lot more eyes to the controversy, if that makes sense. So it's like some small paper writes that you stole money from so and so, and then you write your own op-ed piece saying, I didn't actually steal money from so-and-so, but now everyone knows about this this controversy, because you wrote the op-ed about so-and-so. So I feel like Disney is suffering the Streisand effect here, where it's now it's become fun to meme about, regardless of what your thoughts are on it. So that's kind of a backfiring there. But so this prompted me and Steph, who commented actually, she said they're redoing some of the music apparently too for the new movie. Well, that's not surprising. I think it's Lin-Manuel Miranda who's doing the music. But
what could you add to it musically?
You've got to add something, right? Because you got to sell that new single, that's got to get all the plays.
But it's the most complete of all of the
well, I would have said
Disney
that
scores.
This is pretty complete, overall, but now they had to make it live action, period. So I don't know. So we looked it up, and apparently they are also making a live action Lilo and Stitch in the future. Can you imagine?
Why are they choosing?
That Lilo and Stitch works. That makes the best.
You want to see
live action?
No, I feel like CGI can probably.
But it's Disney CGI. They don't do good things in general.
Well, to be fair, I haven't seen any of these live action remakes, but I feel like if I don't know, maybe I guess you're telling me that they don't do a competent job with the CGI, but I feel like you could do a decent Stitch.
No, but the thing is
Marvel CGI,
harder would be Gontu and what are the other aliens' names? I can't think of their names.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Stitch is probably would be pretty easy.
No,
making it convincing Gontu would be hard.
I think all of it, I can't imagine it not reaching some weird uncanny valley, disgusting.
To be fair though, if you watch the TV series that went along with it, the second and third movie, whatever, the running joke is, when Gontu, who's kind of the nominal bad guy, sort of, the comedically inept bad guy. The joke is in every episode he's running around and someone will see him and they're like, oh look, it's just a Samoan in a whale costume. So I mean that's the joke in the show, that like he looks like that clownish. So I could see, like, looking clownish and like being okay as long as you insert that joke in there.
I could see that. Okay, no, but my problem is truly that the animation, like when I think of, so they're also trying to remake Hercules also in live action, and for these films, like the animation is so part of the character of these films, like the actual like animation style, it's like it's gonna fall flat just because you can't do certain things. Like, can you imagine like some of the musical sequences in Hercules, like, being done live action? Like, I don't know. Or Lilo and Stitch, it's like a lot of the like Stitch's like mannerisms and like even Lilo's mannerisms, they're so exaggerated, but they're so fun. You know what I mean? They're so fun. But like you can't do that with a human being without it looking ridiculous. And so it's like, I don't know. I feel like you just suck all the fun out of these films.
I feel like another one that could be good Hunchback of Notre Dame could be fine, depending on how you animate the gargoyles. But I feel like that's kind of the unloved child of the Disney Renaissance. It's just, I mean, because it really does have to embrace a certain amount of how do I want to say this, like Catholic religiosity in a way, because you can't avoid that, and it gets into some like weird stuff for like a not weird stuff, but like a little heavier stuff than any of the other, like we have the guys sing, the villain singing about like being consumed by the fires of lust.
Yeah,
literally exactly using that term, so it's like a little. I don't feel like Disney would want to do that, bring that back to the screen, but I feel like that could work convincingly.
I agree. I think that would be a better one. But the question for all of it is just why? Why not just make a live action news story? Like, is that so hard? Apparently that's so hard they can't make a live action news story. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I have a feeling it's going to go the way of literally every other remake, and which is everyone will be like, why did I spend $10 on this? I forgot everything afterwards. I'm just going to go watch the original now because I actually, love that thing. So, yeah. And then the only other thing I have to say is, I forgot to say earlier, is my setup has changed. Look at this. I've actually got a boom arm for my mic now, which means I can, I guess, move it wherever I want, which is cool. But also, my whole desk setup, maybe one day I'll take a picture of it, is actually like completely revamped. Look at this. Look what's happening. This is my monitor. I've got everything.
People have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, that's true. If you're listening on podcast only, I've got everything on a boom arm, which is great. My monitor's on a boom arm, my mic's on a boom arm, my camera's on a boom arm. So now I don't have this weird jank setup. Eventually my light, I don't have my light on right now. I just have the room light on. But my film light's going to be on the boom arm on my desk as well, which hopefully will be a lot smoother for content creation in general when I just have to sit here and say something. So that's kind of fun. It also means that I can actually draw. Like before, I had desk space problems, and that's why I wasn't using the whiteboard very often because it's very cumbersome. But now I have tons of space, so I've got my iPad here, and I can just draw away whatever I want. So that's kind of fun. Which is a great transition to say at the end of this segment that you can go support us and get access to this beautiful live whiteboard if you're listening to audio only. This is a live show. You should probably come hang out with us one day. I mean, just try it one Monday. One Monday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. You go to mixedmediapodcast.com. Simple. You click on the YouTube logo, and then you go to YouTube, and there will be live, magically, at 9:30 p.m., or 9:35 or 9:40, depending on how bad our tech issues are. And there you'll be able to see our live whiteboard, which is right here. Hello. That's awesome. And you can draw on that live whiteboard if you go to our support page, which is mixedmedia.locals.com, or you can go to mixedmediapodcast.com. There's a link there as well to it. And just for $5 a month, you can doodle, draw, whatever you want on this live podcast. What I'll do actually is I'll definitely save those and post those on the Discord as well if you end up drawing on here, especially if it's something cool. So there's my little plug. For those who are listening live, we are a live podcast. Obviously, we're live right now, but we do split this segment up. So what we do is we reintroduce our segments so that it makes sense in post. I think that makes sense. Okay, so if we're all ready, I guess we'll just transition to next
Before
section.
we do, is everyone recording on Audacity?
I forgot.
Yeah, I forgot until a few minutes in, so...
Oh, wow.
Okay, well, maybe this one will be a little bit messy for Wesley to edit. Sorry, Wesley. Cool. I think I think the best thing for me is actually just to leave it, and he'll just pull the audio from the stream. But anyway. Let's transition to the next segment here. And here we go.
Mixed Media Movies.
And welcome back to Mixed Media. We are currently live on a Monday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, and you can join us at mixedmediapodcast.com. You can check out a link to find us streaming live. We'd love to have an audience to talk with, and this episode's going to be pretty chit-chatty. I'm not going to be talking too much about movies, or anything maybe about movies today. Today I originally planned on talking about a pretty intense topic, which was just about CIA in Hollywood in the today, which I thought was going to be super fun. But then the move happened, and it took literally, I want to say, 2 to 3 times as much time and effort as I anticipated. It was horrible. So I'm not prepared to talk about those things. So instead, I'll just, riff-raff about all things moving, my experiences, why I did it, how it's going to impact my business. If you didn't know, I run a film and media business. You can check it out at ariella.co. And yeah, that's what we're going to be chit-chatting about today. But with me, I've got 2 of my buddies. Want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and a media composer.
And I'm Nathan Nestor. I'm a game developer and 3D modeler.
Yes, if you're watching this on video too, we've got this thing that says "Hello $5" on the screen right now. That's on a live whiteboard. Here, I'll prove it to you right there. It's a live whiteboard. You can draw on this live whiteboard if you go to mixedmedia.locals.com. There, you can support us for $5 a month. That's what that $5 is for. But for now, I'm going to erase it. There we go. Cool. So the move. So some background for people who didn't know. Before I was living in New York City, in the Bronx in particular. So my business was based out of the Bronx, operating out of the Bronx, and I had been there since 2020, right after I got married. So got married, moved to the Bronx, and then was operating out of the Bronx. Now, not necessarily where I wanted to be exactly. My original desire was to be right outside of New York City, somewhere in maybe North Jersey or like somewhere in like Middlesex County or something like that, if you're familiar with New Jersey, so that I could, basically do work in New York City if I needed to, but I didn't actually want to live there. For many, many reasons, all of which I felt the full and 10 times wrath of while living there. And one thing you might appreciate is that it's quiet right now. You can hear anything. There's no weird droning of my AC unit. There's no weird sirens happening every 10 minutes. It's quite nice. It's very quiet right now. But I would say, actually, I'm a very natural city person. Like, if I took like a quiz, it was like, oh, what kind of place would you want to live in? Urban, suburban, rural, or whatever? I'd probably invariably come up like urban. Like, I can imagine that being the case. I've probably done that in the past. I am a very, I guess, I like variation. I like things that change a lot. I like, exploring those changes. And cities are kind of fast paced like that. But I think there's and this is kind of one of the topics I wanted to talk about. I think there's kind of for people who type themselves that way or get typed that way, there's a lack of understanding of the full cost of that, which is a huge cost. And when I say huge cost, I literally mean money. Living in New York City is expensive. It's expensive in every way. Your mere existence costs you money. Everything about the experience is, when you live in New York City, and if you're around New York City long enough, especially if you're around like young adult communities or like interacting with young professionals and whatnot, it's a revolving door. I assume LA is like that to an extent, Ben, or am I wrong about that feeling?
It's hard to say exactly because technically I live in LA.
Oh no!
And if you,
go ahead.
Is there something wrong?
You froze for a moment, but you're back.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So technically, although I live in LA, city, if you were to say to someone who lives in the city proper, that someone living in the valley lives in LA, they would say they don't live in LA. And if someone living in the valley where I live said, they, yeah, it's, so the valley, as we call it, San Fernando Valley, there are other valleys, but the San Fernando Valley is not really, it is LA, technically, legally, and it is LA, and that it is very easy to get to LA. Easy, I mean, traffic in LA, whatever that means. But it's like a totally different kind of cultural world than what you think of like, Hollywood and then like downtown LA. The ironic thing about where I live, at least I find it ironic, that kind of, I may have mentioned this on an earlier show, but the iconic shot in the film La La Land, bridge of the mountain, they look out, right, and they're singing like, what is it? What a waste of a lovely night, right? And it has the line like, we're looking at the sunset and all the twinkly lights, and it calls it the silver shine that stretches to the sea. What they're looking at, what you think you're looking at, is you're up on in like roughly the probably somewhere in like the Hollywood Hills. You're looking out over downtown LA, and then the sea would be right there. And you can see, if you go up to lots of mountains, you can go see from all over the place, and you get really, really beautiful views. But what they're actually looking at is they're looking in the opposite direction. They're on in Griffith Park, up on one of the hills up there, and a very specific place, and they're looking north at the San Fernando Valley where I live. Mm-hmm. And that is looking away from the ocean. You're looking inland. Right. So I've always found that really ironic. There, because no one around here, the LA and the Valley are very separate things culturally. So I don't know. I've always found that ironic.
Interesting. I didn't know that. So that's cool. But wait, so would you say that it's like where you are? I don't know how the difference.
Well, where I am, it is. It's kind of like very densely packed, and it is an extremely Hispanic area, and it is kind of, I don't know, but there are young people because of where I am, like school-wise. I'm literally across the street from my school, but it's mostly kind of like, I would say, lot of like kind of lower middle class families.
Mm.
So it doesn't really have the same. I mean, a lot of like the kids who go to the school here, have the aspiration of being, like going to the city, right, proper. But otherwise, it's not really quite as, filled with the weird kind of. It's like urban, but also it's kind of like suburbia, but like a large swath of suburbia kind of crammed together in a sort of urban way, if that makes sense.
No, that makes complete sense. I get that. I get that. Interesting. Well, I can say for sure that New York City, the professional class in New York City is completely completely a revolving door. Either you are, working in finance or tech or something like that, and you are living in the city because you imagine this dream of living there, while you're young, between your 25 and your 35 or something like that before you settle down. Like very like cookie cutter, like, idea of like how you're going to live your life, which is, I would call that just as revolving door. You're not settling down into New York to make New York your home, right? It's just sort of a environment to party and have fun, whatever, and then you're out. And then there's the other type, the more like artisan type, especially the non-native New Yorker, the non-native New Yorker, who is extremely revolving door, whether you're a cafe owner or a painter or a filmmaker or a musician. You're going to be there, you think, for 5-10 years. You're going to be there actually for a year and a half. And you're going to get absolutely slaughtered by the environment around you. And you're going to, even if you don't regret being there, you're going to be forced out probably by some either economic force or something like that will force you out of there. And that's kind of how the city functions. A fun fact about, or fun thing about New York, if you talk to, there's a huge difference in New York between the native and the sort of, I don't know, revolving door person, whatever you want to call them. There's a huge difference, drastic difference between the native New Yorker and, the aspiring professional. The native New Yorker is keenly aware of all the city's problems, and they accept them, and they just say, this is my home, right? It's a very different vibe for them. Where was I going with this? There's a point I had. Dang, I lost my train of thought. But in any case, like, there's two very different experiences. Oh yeah, that was the fun fact. Yeah, so if you talk to native New Yorkers who actually, some of them have had businesses there that are multi-generational. In fact, almost certainly, if you find someone who's natively a New Yorker, there'll be some sort of story like that. A shopkeeper sort of story. And those people got in early, and their families got in early, and they were able to make do. But really, the experience in New York is getting screwed over and over and over again. And so, like, the native New Yorker knows this already. They don't call licensing fees. They call them gimme money. It's like, so the overwhelming environment in New York is very unfriendly to business. It's crushing. If you want to see an interesting perspective on this, on YouTube, there's this guy. What's his name? Gosh, he has a huge YouTube channel. He used to have a tech store in New York, tech repair shop in New York. I can't remember his name. Ross, something Ross, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, if you find his channel, you know what I'm talking about. I think it's Ross. I think his name's Ross. You will find a lot of interesting things about how New York functions in terms of basically extorting businesses out of more tax money without actually taxing them further, which is basically saying you need 10 licenses to operate, and if you don't do your paperwork, dot your I's, cross your T's, there's going to be a fee just to dot the I and cross the T. And if you don't do that perfectly, then we're going to come to your door with a police officer and demand more money out of you. So it's kind of like that. That's the environment that you're in. And you might ask yourself, how could this function forever like that? Surely people would be so angry that this couldn't continue to function this way. Oh no, there's an endless supply of revolving door people who will front the bill for a year and a half and then leave. That's exactly how it works. Louis Rossman. Yes, thank you, producer Steph. Louis Rossman is the name of the YouTuber, if you want to look him up. And so, yeah, that's how the city functions. It's based on broken dreams. That's how it funds itself.
I know this guy.
Yeah.
I've seen him before. I didn't know his name. Interesting.
Okay. Yeah, he's a huge
backstory.
Yes. He only left New York, like, maybe less than a year ago. So most of his channel is about him being in New York. And he's a native New Yorker. So, yeah. So you have to think about New York City as that kind of place. The very earth is trying to extract money from your being. That's how you should think about it. So when it comes to taxes, business filings, just operating legally and above board, it's like I'm working from home most of the time, and it's can be a little confusing and overwhelming. The transit system is. Don't even get me started. It is. It costs the MTA $1 billion to lay 1 mile of subway. Does that number make any in the realm of sense to anyone?
At that rate, I'm certain you'll get 1 mile of subway per year.
1 mile of subway every 10 years.
But at least you can get places using public transportation, right?
Well,
they don't have that in many places in California, right? Something about the ground or something like that.
You only have bus systems, right?
There are buses.
Yeah.
That get you absolutely nowhere that you want to go, and in no kind of timely fashion. Like you might want to, when I first got here last, late summer, early fall, I didn't have a car, and just the effort to go. So everything takes a while to get anywhere, but if you go the right time of day, it's not too much traffic. So I went to the store, grocery store today. It's a 7-8 minute drive. It's like a 40-minute bus ride, and it once a day. And then you have 10 minutes at the store. Otherwise, you miss the bus back, and you're done.
I don't think it's as
not really functional.
I don't know if it's as bad as LA. I don't know how to compare them, but I feel like once you get to a certain point of broken, I don't know if there's much of a difference. For example, since we live in the Bronx, if you live in the outer boroughs, you're screwed. If you live in Manhattan, your public transport is totally fine as long as you stay within Manhattan, or even if you're going to the outer boroughs, it's not the worst thing in the world. But if you live in one of the outer boroughs, and God forbid you want to go to another outer borough. So if I'm living in the Bronx and I have to go to Brooklyn, let's say, for a shoot, right? You would think, given the geography of New York, that there would be a train connecting the Bronx to Brooklyn. The Bronx kind of almost basically connects to Queens, and Queens is literally up against the Brooklyn. And so you'd think, why don't we just run a bridge, the train goes to Brooklyn. No, it's not how it works. You got to go to Grand Central in Manhattan. You got to go all the way down to Manhattan. You got to take the train from transfer in Grand Central, go all the way to Brooklyn, and that will take you probably 2 hours, or an hour and a half or something like that, to go a total of what's really in distance by road, probably something like 5 miles. So that's pretty nuts. That's pretty extreme. But let's say you were like, hey, that's fine. On the train, I can write scripts. That's what a lot of people do on trains. They write, or they read, or they do some interesting things, be productive on the train. Guess what? The train is going to have no air conditioning, so it's going to boil you alive for an hour and a half.
There's no air conditioning on New York subways?
On most of them. There's air conditioning on the lower west side, I believe. But that's it.
Wait, there's no way. They're paying $1 billion per a mile of track, but they can't put air conditioning that costs like 2 cents, relatively speaking.
Hey
into
man,
the
it would be
subway.
way too expensive to replace the trains, and put
We
new
don't have to replace the
trains.
trains, right? I don't know. Like, there's no like easy like sort of like quick and dirty like Band-Aid type solution to get some cooling in a train. I don't know.
That's not going to cost another $1 billion, of course. Um, so yeah, so it's going to boil you alive if you're in the summer, at least. In the winter, at least there's heating. Um, and if it's not boiling you alive, then you might get stabbed to death. So there's that. So guess what's not happening if you're a filmmaker? You're not taking the subway with your equipment. That's not ever happening. So any dream of you traveling anywhere for $2 and being like, yeah, I'm going to take a trip. It's going to only cost me, whatever, $2 is an exaggeration, $10. It's going to cost me $10. And I'm going to go from here to there on the train. I'm going to be on my laptop writing scripts while I've got my, $3,000 camera underneath me with another $10,000 of support equipment and other bags around me. That ain't happening. So you're going to drive. There's no other option. You're going to drive. And when you take the car, you're going to die of traffic. It's going to be horrible. At any time of the day that's not between midnight and I would say around 5 a.m. That's pretty much the only time when you can freely move in New York City. Otherwise, you're going to be absolutely destroyed, especially if you're in the outer boroughs, by inner borough traffic in particular. Cross Bronx, things like that. You're going to die. You want to go to Jersey? Ha! You want to go to Jersey? Got to cross the George Washington Bridge, because why? On the west side of New York, there's only 2 portals into the city. The George Washington Bridge and the Lincoln Tunnel. If you count the Holland Tunnel in the south, okay, maybe 3. But the Holland Tunnel, where does it connect? In Jersey City. Literally in the middle of the grid of Jersey City is a tunnel connection to New York. That's a great idea. But any case, travel sucks. It's going to cost you $1 billion just to exist. And there's a lot more things. There's just excessive control over what you can and can't do. It's actually nuts. The amount of time where I'm I just want to be a normal human being. For example, I carry a Letterman, or I carry a Letterman now. A Letterman that has a knife in it, because it's a utility. It's got a pliers, it's got other things in there. It's got a knife. And a knife is useful when you're cutting tape and other things on a film set. It's a utility. And, I just want to put the knife in my pocket. Nope. Very bad idea in New York City. And they actually enforce this kind of crap. So it's a problem. Anyway, it's insane just how much you have to think about existing, moving, and money in New York City. Take whatever you think your budget is, multiply it by 2, and then just don't go there. That's my recommendation. Okay, so I could rail about New York City. That's very light. If you want to get the full details, you can message me on Discord or something like that, and I'll give you the full details. If you're thinking, I'm going to move to New York, no, I'll tell you everything you need to know about not doing that. But anyway, yeah, crime has gotten really bad. So forget even shooting in the streets. Don't do that. So you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go shoot the Freedom Tower, or I'm gonna go to some park and I'm gonna film, and I'm gonna use a DSLR so that it seems as though I'm an amateur, but I'm actually gonna get some cool stuff without having to get a permit. No, disabuse yourself of all those ideas unless you want to get stabbed and or fined. So there you go. Okay. Good. So now we get to the move itself. So I've been trying to move for the past year. There's a lot of drama involved. There might be some lawsuits filing. I'm not going to talk about it right now because it's a story for another day, potentially. But yes, it was hell. And my productivity went down the drain entirely because of just trying to leave the frickin' city. So good. New York City's last revenge on my life, trying to leave the place. But yes, a week ago, or what is it, 2 weeks ago, I can't remember, it's all a blur, we decided that we're actually going to freaking leave the city. Now, the plan was to buy a duplex. and to do what's called house hacking. If you don't know what that is, look it up. It'll change your life, and then you'll never be poor again, and that's good. Look up house hacking. Basically, you live in one unit and rent out the other unit, and if you do it right, you will be able to create a wealth base for yourself that might carry your art career. So story for another day, another episode. We'll talk about that later. But the idea was to buy a duplex, but the housing market was going nuts, obviously, parabolic upward. And the number still worked out, though, funnily enough. And so we're like, maybe we should just bite the bullet because we can't stay here any longer. And then a lot of problems with like loans and other things and getting approved for a mortgage. If you are a small business, it is very hard for you to get personal loans. It's very easy for you to get business loans, sort of, but it's very difficult for you to get personal loans because unless you can pay yourself a W-2 that's sizable regularly on time for 2 years, your income does not count, which is kind of crazy. That's also a story for another day. So we found a stopgap solution was basically renting very cheaply in a town, because our original idea, we wanted to live in the sort of Hershey, Lancaster region of Pennsylvania. If you're familiar, it's freaking gorgeous. We went to visit multiple times, and every time we were like, we gotta move here. It's amazing. But we ended up, picking a place out to rent here in coal country. So basically north of that sort of region, what we call the anthracite region of Pennsylvania. And it's the sort of south edge of the mountain range that runs through Pennsylvania. So north of here, you've got like, Scranton and other places like that. Here, the closest major city is Pottsville. Which is the headquarters of Yuengling, which you definitely know when you're driving around here. There's Yuengling signs everywhere.
What's Yuengling?
It's a beer company, and they always let you know they're America's oldest brewery. There's no bit of branding that escapes the America's oldest brewery branding. They're very aggressive about that. Very proud about that. But yeah, so I'm near Pottsville, about 30 minutes out, and living in a small town, which, I don't know, I keep going back and forth as to whether it's a problem to say where I am or not. It's like, just small enough, if that makes sense. It's like, I don't know, it's kind of, once I say it, it's out the bag, and I can't undo it, so maybe I'll leave that at that for now. So, 30 minutes out of Pottsville. And, I freaking love this place. This was not our intended sort of move location at all. Actually, before I get to that, the move was hell. It was hell. In the episode art, you can see my Corolla hitched onto the back of a U-Haul. Never do this. Never, ever, ever do this. I did this with a 10-foot U-Haul. If you're going to do it, you need at least a 20-foot U-Haul. Even if you don't need the space, because, we didn't need 20-foot worth of space to move our stuff, but you need that 20-foot truck's engine. But that's for sure. And one thing I didn't realize was that I was driving a death trap. So that was horrible. That was absolutely horrible. We originally planned to do the trip in split the trip in two, stop somewhere, stay the night at a hotel, then keep driving. It's only a 3-hour drive, but it's the stress of packing and unpacking we're trying to divide out. The stress of driving was not properly included. This thing, I kid you not, should not be sold as a pair at U-Haul. The crazy thing about this whole thing is when you go to rent this thing on uhaul.com, it literally checks which vehicle you're putting with which other vehicle and says, oh yeah, this is good. So it's not as if I took liability on my own to understand, I just relied on them saying, hey, your Corolla is, the weight of it and all that, and the 10-foot truck's horsepower and all that. Yeah, that works. Huh. that trailer doesn't have brakes. I thought it had brakes. It does not have brakes. This is very bad. Uh,
You mean? Do you mean literally it doesn't have brakes, or like the brakes just weren't strong enough to like?
it literally does not have like, so it has like emergency brakes on it. Like if it detects that it's like doing something crazy, it'll like just turn on brakes. But it doesn't have brakes that depress when I depress the pedal on the truck. So there's no hookup to the truck's brakes. So that's very bad. So bad. And I didn't realize how bad it was, by the way. I felt like I was in a death trap when I was driving it, but I was like, it's okay, it's normal, because this is something everyone does, right? Like, strap a car to the truck and it works just fine. Maybe it feels like if I go above 40 miles an hour, like if I go 42 miles an hour, that the back of the trailer is going to literally fishtail and kill us all. But if as long as I stay at exactly 40 miles an hour, it's fine, and that must be a normal thing. Afterwards, I get here. Steph says only has catastrophic emergency brakes. Yep, exactly. I get here, and one of my neighbors used to be a semi driver. Apartment neighbors used to be a semi driver. And I'll bring him back up in a moment. Maybe I'll have him on the podcast one day. He's a cool dude. And he was just like, "You towed your car with a U-Haul?" I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Can I see?" I bring him out front and I show him this image here of the truck. He was like, "Dude, you made it from where?" Like I was like, the Bronx, and he was just like, "No way, you're a hero." Basically, it's just like as if I had done this Herculean task. Then I talked to my friend over the phone, who's driven tractors and all that kinds of stuff, and then he was just like, "You know that was a very deadly thing that you tried to do, right?" I had no idea. Anyway, it felt deadly, that's for sure. And I will never again do it in my life.
Like, can it really be that bad if you
it's
all
bad.
like this must happen? But like maybe it just feels bad, you know? Like maybe
No, it actually is bad.
Because wouldn't U-Haul be sued to infinity if their like site tool is very wrong, you know, about like what it can and cannot happen, you know?
This is what I think. This is what is going through my mind. I'm like, well, it can't be that bad. I mean, I'm sure they would get sued to oblivion if, like, you know. It is that bad. If you want to look up how it can be so bad, look up what's called trailer sway. It is a real thing, and it happens when your payload behind you is too heavy compared to your own weight. If you think about the physics of it, it makes a lot of sense. But I was probably towing at like something like 100 to 140% of the truck's weight, because the trailer itself is 1 ton, and the car is 2 tons, and the car had a bunch of stuff in it, a couple hundred more pounds, and the back of the truck, the 10-foot truck, was full, but it's not like the heaviest stuff in the world. So yeah, the truck might have been, I don't know, 3.5 tons, and I'm pulling like, maybe 3 tons. So I'm like pulling like at a ratio that's insane. For perspective, it's supposed to be 40% max. So, and I might have been, and I had actually been illegal, so I might have just admitted to a crime of pulling this thing. I have no idea, but so there's
you all said you could do it, so
exactly. I blame U-Haul. Yes. But yeah, I'm here. I'm here in Pennsylvania. I love the heck out of it. Every day I fall more in love with this place, and it's bad because I didn't plan to move here permanently. I was planning to be here 6 months or less. Actually, I should tell you what my rent is. Some personal information. And I should make you jealous so that you can think about moving outside of whatever urban place that you're in. My rent, $750 a month. That is nuts. That is so dirt cheap. And I've got my own office now, people. I have my own like full-on office. Like I've got a big room. I can't you can't see it right now. It's not done yet, but I can have like beautiful charging station. I can have like beautiful green screen wall, and And Steph is right. The people are so freaking nice. Like, these people are like some of the nicest people I've ever met in my entire life. So welcoming, so warm. Um, I'm from Jersey, so, and I'm from Jersey, and I grew up around New York City. Both cultures are, familiar to me. There's something about when I go to New Jersey again where, like, I talk to people and I feel like there's this instant understanding. We have the same mode of communication. It's something you don't realize is a thing until you leave for a long time. But something I left when I left for college, coming back home, I was like, why is it that it feels like communicating with strangers feels a lot more comfortable? It's just all these little weird, like, microculture things that happen where, like, you understand how much space people need and how much how much warmth there is and what is warmth in this context. New York City is its own thing. It's very brash, but also really, I would say the average person's quite, I don't know how to describe it. It's not a negative kind of brash. I don't know how else to put it. You just got to be here or be there. Here, it's like, I was expecting there to be like another adjustment to have to happen from my, like, native way of understanding human interaction, all this kind of stuff. And yeah, there's some of that, but, like, it's just crazy just how, like, just being just the culture of people being simply inviting ameliorates all of that sort of social anxiety of, like, how do I adjust my behavior to be like that of my neighbors, right? It's like, no, it's actually just fine. And when you're like, oh, I came from the Bronx, people are just striking up conversation about that. It's not too weird to them. They're not threatened by it. It's amazing. And the natural beauty of this region is something that is hard to put a finger, hard to describe. It is so I just drive to Pottsville because I haven't had internet for 2 weeks. Just drive to Pottsville to go to a cafe every day to do, like, the light work I could do off of a laptop, which was not very much, which is stressing me out because now I've got a lot of work to catch up on. But that daily drive to Pottsville was every day gorgeous, and a lot of days it was a new type of gorgeous. Sometimes I would catch it at golden hour, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And sometimes I'd catch it with the fog rolling through the mountains. And I'm like, this is crazy. And I'm like realizing I could stop on the highway right now, pull out my camera, capture it all, not a single fear in my life. That's amazing, people. Like, if you're a filmmaker, come on, like, you gotta think about that. Think about not just, like, what connections are around you, but also, like, what do you want to film? I was also in Pottsville at a restaurant that's an old train station that's half of it's been converted into a restaurant. Beautiful restoration. I guarantee you, if I went to that restaurant owner and I said, I kind of want to shoot a scene in here, that my odds of them just saying yes, probably without them saying, well, how much are you going to give me, is probably 5 times higher. Like, just for me being of the region too. Hey, I live in such and such town. Like, I'm a local filmmaker. I would love to. Oh, you're a local filmmaker. Well, we all love local things, and we all love local things very dearly. And so, just have this place when we're not open, And
I'm curious. You guys have like a Walmart or like a Target, like,
We do, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So here's the crazy thing. Here's the big lie about urban areas and people like me. I would say there is so much to do here. You could not exhaust yourself. Like, you're like, oh, it's like rural or whatever. Pennsylvania is like little. The settlements, they're like settlements, like especially this region. They're like mining town settlements that are, they're no longer mining towns mostly, but mining town settlements of the olden days. And so they're like these little urban pockets nestled in this natural beauty. So right now I'm in a blocked, I would call this, from a city planning perspective, urban. I technically live in an urban setting, but it's so small that I could drive across it in less than 10 minutes, right? But it having that beautiful balance of rural and urban, I could do anything. that I could do in New York City. I guarantee you I could do anything within the same travel distance as New York City. Why? Because it took forever for me to travel in New York City. So like if I said like, I want to go to a boutique restaurant that's got 5 stars, it's famous, whatever, in Lower Manhattan, it would take me an hour to drive there, right, to get to Lower Manhattan. If I had an hour radius around where I am right now, I could go anywhere. I could go to wineries, I could go to breweries, I could go to literally anything. It's like, it's insane the amount of stuff to do around here. Orchards, and 5-star restaurants, and all kinds of cultural centers around here. If you want hipster, there's hipster. If you want, redneck, there's redneck. There's whatever you want is here. It's nuts. And I'm like, people don't think about this the right way. They don't think about it at all the right way. I'm paying $750 a month for rent, and I can have nightlife and whatever the heck else I want, living in this tiny little town, And I guess that's the point I wanted to drive across, is basically like this bias towards the urban for artists is completely undue compared to the costs of the urban, in most urban settings, I should say. It's something that you should probably think about again. And, I didn't plan on living here in the cool region. The Hershey-Lancaster region is a lot more hoppin', it's a lot more, artsy, and I still love it, and I still kind of want to be there as well. But, I'm in the middle of nowhere with concerns to, what people think as somewhere. But honestly, everything that is in the somewhere is in the nowhere. And that's the beautiful thing about everything and more. So, yeah. Anyway, look out to if you want to follow this sort of awakening. You can follow my YouTube channel. If you search Ariella Productions on YouTube, you'll find it. On there, I've got this whole gigantic fall shoot planned, just canvassing the entire region, because I've just fallen the frickin' heck in love with it. And so I'm going to be posting that at some point. And it's going to be fun. Going to be making some hard cider. For the first time. I've never brewed hard cider before, but I think it should be fun. Going to be touring some orchards and going to some beautiful, beautiful sites that I've just happened upon while driving. And hopefully I can convince you to rethink, what is necessary, in order to succeed as an artist. There you go. That's my segment. Any thoughts from the gallery?
Yeah, I mean, you talked to me about it before, so I mean, I don't know if it's just interesting. Yeah, I don't nothing. I don't have too much input, I guess, that I haven't said before.
Yeah,
yeah. It's just one of those things that people talk about a lot. Is a composer, right? Do you have to live around LA, or can you live somewhere else, or do you have to start off in LA and then you can move somewhere else? It's, of course, more complicated if you want to actually be in the business of recording, because that is something that takes place in pretty much one location, with in Hollywood, and potentially with a few things done in Seattle, and a lot of video game things being done in Nashville, but pretty much just one location where you have to do it. So otherwise, I would not live in LA. I still don't know whether I'm going to ultimately whether I want to stay here long term. So but yeah, good things to think about for artists, right? Location, and is whether it's a certain location is necessary for you, absolutely necessary or not. Something to think about.
For sure. Yeah, there's that balance too. It really depends on what you're doing too. So that's a good point. Yeah. Cool. All right, that's the end of my segment. If you are still out there, shout out to y'all. And also shout out to 909 Crime and Rob Sharma for supporting us at mixedmedia.locals.com. You can join them at mixedmedia.locals.com, or you can go to mixedmediapodcast.com. We have a Discord as well if you want to check out the links in the description. All the links you could possibly want are literally everywhere. You can't miss them unless, I don't know, you die. So you can't miss them, literally. So if you want to join us on Discord, we've got some fun stuff happening on Discord still. We've got a cool bot on there, so if you want to hop on there and mess around with our fun bot, you can join our Discord. With that, we're going to be doing Arguing with Reddit next, with Ben reacting to some hot takes and maybe a meme. Maybe I threw a meme in there. I don't know. So we'll transition now. And here we go.
Mixed Media Music.
All right, welcome to Mixed Media Music, the segment of Mixed Media podcast, where we, led by me, talk about things related to music generally, kind of a focus on film and TV music and classical music, but again, just music in general. So I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and a media composer, one of the co-hosts of the weekly Mixed Media podcast, a live streamed podcast that you can watch live every Monday at 9:30 Eastern. I have to remember, I'm here on the West Coast. But yeah, so where my co-host and I talk about all things related to art in our specific fields, or more generally. So why don't we just quickly introduce ourselves before we get started? So again, I'm Ben Costello.
And I'm Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. You can check out my company called Ariella.
And I'm Nathan Nestor. I'm a 3D modeler and game developer.
All right. Well, welcome to our show. Today we have on Mixing Media Music, we have our Arguing with Reddit segment, a segment where we rotate who does it each week, and this week it lands on me. So I will be reacting to various things, opinions, memes, whatever, hot takes on that my co-host have found for me on somewhere on the internet, most likely on Reddit, but can be from anywhere. And I haven't seen them, so you get to get my raw response to whatever they throw in front of me. And one is something that I found for myself, so I have seen that, but I haven't really thought my response to it entirely yet either. So you'll get that as well. So yeah, that's what we'll be doing today. So Irving, why don't you cue up our first hot take of the day? Sweet.
So this one is from me. I thought I would get it out of the way because it's a very quick meme. We need to have a meme rating scale or something like that for these memes. But here
we did that like the one time. We did this like once where you gave me some memes and like I gave them a rating, not really knowing what I was doing, but
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't get this to look good.
Is this on the Discord? I really can't see it, so I can. If it's on our Discord, I'll pull it up and look at it.
Yeah, it's on the chat in the Discord.
Okay. Cool. Give me 1 second.
It was an r/orchestra memes or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we have the meme of the. Describe a meme for those who are listening, not watching this. I don't know, what do you call this meme?
The Drake meme. I feel like that's like good enough,
Okay, the Drake meme. So we got like the rejecting the choosing an instrument that sounds nice but is awkward to hold, and then the satisfied Drake choosing an instrument that sounds equally as beautiful but is much nicer to hold. Is that like directed at bassoons, I guess?
No, there's some white text on the second on the good meme, I guess.
Oh, okay. This meme was brought to you by the cello bass game. Okay. I I'm not really. I guess strings. I'm a wind player, so when you talk about awkward instruments, it's bassoon.
Wait, but isn't the bass an awkward instrument because it's massive?
I mean, probably, but my mind goes to bassoon first because bassoon is it's a dinosaur. Like it's literally a dinosaur, right? All the other wind instruments have radically changed since they're, the modern well, obviously like forms of flutes go back to like literally there's very recently discovered really like I think the earliest flute thing ever found, it's from like wing bone of some, I think some kind of eagle, I think, or some kind of vulture in Germany. Kind of cool to look at. Hundreds of several I think like 125,000 years old, maybe older than that. Anyway, but the modern line of all the wind instruments, kind of going back to like end of Renaissance-ish era. Since the creation of these modern, instruments, they've all the wind instruments anyway, they've all undergone a radical transformation. Probably the flute more than all of them. The concert flute now is a really interesting creation that has made some really interesting choices and some interesting compromises sonically to achieve what it can do. But the one instrument that has not changed is the bassoon. It is literally an instrumental dinosaur. It is still, you can't tune it really. It doesn't have a tuning mechanism. You can't, I'm sharp, I'm going to pull it out. Can't do that on the bassoon. All the other winds, woodwinds at least, their fingerings, are kind of based now on the Barham system, which is, he's the guy who kind of made the most modern, flute that you think of when you see a flute in an orchestra. So they all kind of have more or less roughly the same sort of fingering design. Bassoon is nothing like that. It has all these, weird like spatula keys and whatever. It's weird to hold. It's, a double reed, like a large double reed, unlike the oboe. It's got an enormous range. It's literally like the instrumental dinosaur, but somehow still walking around. So I don't know. That's what, as a wind player, that's what I think of when I thought of when I saw this. Right, the bassoon. It can sound pretty, but a lot of times it's kind of stereotyped into like this comedic clown kind of sound, and it can be used really effectively in that manner. But in terms of awkwardness of like actually like the mechanics of holding and playing, doing the fingers on it, only bassoon players would dare touch a bassoon. So that's what I thought of. Wasn't thinking of strings. I guess, yeah, I don't know. So, and it works for bassoons too. Who chooses to play the bassoon, right? Very few people like, well, I want to play the bassoon. When I was in fourth grade and the band director trotted out all the instruments, was there a bassoon in sight to demonstrate for me? No, I didn't know the bassoon existed until much later in my life. My options are flute, clarinet, saxophone, trumpet, trombone, or anything else. No, they didn't even show us a horn or an oboe.
There was bass clarinet in my middle school band.
Oh yeah, but that wasn't. They didn't show that to the young kids, right? But it's like after you've been playing for a year, the teacher might say, well, you should play tuba, you should play bass clarinet, you should play tenor sax instead of alto sax. No, I didn't know that a bassoon was a thing for a while. It's kind of like a harp. It's like one of those instruments that not as many people play. But this bassoon is kind of there's a book that I've never finished, but I started reading it. It's called A Devil to Play. One man's journey of learning how to play bassoon. It's like not designed in an ergonomic manner, because nobody was thinking about that in like 1550. They're like, well, how can I make this instrument work, right? So
Yeah. Interesting. But would you agree with the assertion though that that bass and cello players have the optimal setup?
well, I guess, yeah. I mean, the question is, do you play viola, right? Because that's really that's the odd instrument out of the string family. You have violin, right? And everyone knows what a violin can do. It's virtuosic. It's high, whatever. It's the singing voice of the orchestra. You have cello, very human, warm sound. Bass, we all know what a bass does, right? And this viola. Like, what is a viola? Who knows what a viola is?
I'm aware of this orchestra meme because I knew a viola player in high school, and
yeah, what is the viola, right? What, right? Like it's like a big violin. Like, what does it do? Oh well, and then there's this well, what kind of parts does it play? Oh, it just plays the upbeats, right? Oh, you're playing a waltz. It's the instrument goes da 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 da, right, on 2 and 3. That's what it does, right? Is there any virtuosic moment, any melodic moment for a viola? No. I mean, okay, obviously it's not literally true, but like, now one of the best instrumental combos is flute, viola, and harp. Really beautiful. Probably my favorite chamber ensemble: flute, viola, and harp. But no, who knows what a viola is?
Nice.
Yeah, there's a famous video somewhere, YouTube video from many years ago. It's like I think it's called "How to Be a Classical Musician," and one of the little skits, like they're like 10-second long, like skits or whatever, scenes, and it's like this guy dating a musician, and he's like sitting on the on the lawn, like drinking wine. And he's like, so I hear you play violin. And she says, oh no, I actually play viola. And the guy just grabs his wine and runs away.
Oh man, rip viola players.
and yeah, no. So I have a ton of respect for viola players. It's a really, really beautiful instrument. It just kind of is kind of hidden in the shadows.
Yeah. Cool.
I have a question about this meme though. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's supposed to be a pro cello, pro bass type meme, right? But okay, I get that. If I'm thinking the right instrument, right? You just kind of sit there, right? And you don't really have to hold it in any any uncomfortable way, I guess. It just kind of lays on the ground mostly, and then you kind of hold it a little bit, right? Am I wrong about that or correct? Right?
Yeah. Well, you have a little peg that that the instrument rests on that kind of connects it to the ground, and then you kind of holding it upwards. Yeah.
But I feel like the issue here. So okay, maybe it's true that it is a very comfortable instrument to play, right? But when you're not playing it, isn't it like the worst instrument because they're massive? So like, transporting it anywhere, any distance that's not 2 feet away is basically worse than just about any other instrument. It's like I don't know if that really is worth it for
I think harp players would disagree with you.
That's true. That thing is massive.
I'm friends with a really great harp player. He would disagree with you.
Okay,
transporting a harp is much harder than transporting a cello.
So here's the weird thing about harps, though, right? Is like they're a weird size. Like no one tries to transport a piano as if it's portable, right? Like, but they try to transport a harp as if it's portable. Like, at a certain point, is it just not portable? Like,
well, part of it is that it's not hard to just get a keyboard anywhere. And a lot of places are going to have pianos, even if they don't just have and if they don't even grab a keyboard, right? Electric keyboard. But the number of places you can go to where you're gonna play that have a harp lying around is like 0. So you kind of need to carry it.
That's true.
Yeah. Cool. That's cool. I learned about the bassoon with this meme. I did not think that was going to happen, so that's good.
It's literally it's this dinosaur that somehow hasn't gone extinct. Like what are oh, I don't know. Like it's like one of those animals, like what are like the coelacanths or something like that. Like those really ancient fish from like the time of the dinosaurs that are still swimming around. The bassoon is one of those things.
Yeah, cool. I have finally, I think, mostly conquered Reddit's weird differences now with their subreddit pages, because now I have 2 templates. I believe there's only 2 versions of the subreddit page. So now I can select this template. Oh, there it is. It works. Okay. This one is from Nathan. So Nathan, you'll have to explain.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a big wall of text. But so the title is Modern Audience. Oh, so I said the subreddit is called Let's Talk Music. And I never pulled from the subreddit before. I actually never heard of it until today. And the title is Modern Audience Snobbery About Mixes. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the general idea is that the poster is sort of annoyed when he sees people saying that they can't stand the mixing of older songs, and how modern mixes tend to be a lot more. I was going to say clean, but I don't think he uses that word exactly. So I don't want to say anything that he doesn't say. But in his opinion, well, I guess he's saying the general opinion is that modern mixes are more nice, right? For him, he does like, or her likes the old type of mixing quite a bit because they don't feel quite as perfect, which sort of puts him or her off. And I guess a good way to sum up is where it says, quote, "I'd rather hear a punk vocalist not sing with the conventionally expected vocal tone and pitch expected by audiences than someone who neatly and tidily fits into the category." And as a reference, I've actually not. Oh, okay, sorry, I misread. But as a reference, he uses Bohemian Rhapsody as an example. But yeah, that's pretty much the general thing.
I guess he's talking more about pop music, but probably, the standards across all genres of music have, changed. I'm not terribly knowledgeable on this exact, this issue, but just for me thinking about, if you watched our last show, I think I was talking about swing dancing, right? And so to practice that, right? I've been listening to, I'm practicing doing some like dance stuff, right? Trying to learn some new moves. Listening to a lot of different recordings of music from the 30s and 40s, right, and late 20s, and this is kind of an interesting thing with jazz too, because if you listen to all the the big bands, like the most popular big bands, there are tons and tons of recordings of them of all sorts of qualities, and they'll play the same song. Like if you listen to Duke Ellington's band play Take the A Train, there are probably 200 different recordings of them doing it at different times. And of course there's the element of the improv is going to be a little bit different each time, but the quality of different recordings and how they've been remixed versus ones that haven't really undergone a ton of transformation. I have been thinking a little bit about this, and my really basic understanding is that there's a lot different sense of what kind of compression should be used, and some of it has to do with the mics too that is used in older music as opposed to today, and with music recorded now or remixed, remastered now, older things, I think there's a tendency towards the super clean sound, and That could be for better or for worse. It depends on what you're trying to hear. Like if you are trying to transcribe something, like I'm listening to it and I want to write down all the notes that I hear. You want to hear every detail. Then you want something that's super clean. Right? You may hear a few tiny details that you couldn't have heard before. But on the other hand, you are giving up a little bit of like color and character that happens from the kinds of compression that I think were more common in older music. And so some of that's also just like the sound of that, right? Like, you can ask yourself, like, if you're going to listen, let's say, I'm going to go back to another show from earlier this summer. We're talking about the Great Gatsby, and music, that would have been played literally. I think the novel takes place in the summer of 1922, right? So, what kind of musical experience would the people in 1922 have had? Well, you could hear music live, and we'll never be able to capture that. And like even the greatest, highest fidelity recordings today are not exactly the same thing that you get when you experience music live. But otherwise, this is like 1922. It's the beginning of like the massive boom in record sales, right? And so people are listening to this stuff on records, and some of us have came to know with whatever kind of color was into the mixes then. So that's what the sound of the era literally was at the time. You can pull out pristine, never opened, records from any time in the past that people collect these things, and you can hear that, and that is what the music, what it sounded like when it came out to anyone who wasn't listening to it live. So it is in some ways the sound of it. I could get a better or higher fidelity recording by doing some weird things to the mix if I have the original, master tapes and whatever. But it's almost a slightly, like, it's still the same work of art, but it's a slightly different work in a way. So I think, listen to multiple styles, and I think there's a reason why a lot of it's kind of this resurgence in people wanting to listen to records. It's kind of a different sound. It's a different sound if you listen to like the original mono mixes of the Beatles, and if you listen to like the 50th anniversary super duper awesome high fidelity remixes that are available now.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective. I find most so I think my perspective changed when I was listening to some, like, not even that old records, but just like, basically before the 90s. Just the dynamic range, like, difference in the loudness is like, it's like an expanse compared to a lot of pop records today. Today it's just a wall of sound always.
Yeah,
it's kind of fatiguing.
I don't know. I think there's something to be said for like a certain amount of compression adding this kind of just warmth and sweetness to things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with you. It's just like, it's like compression as a tool versus compression as a as a tool to make the art better, or as like a, I guess, crutch just to make it louder.
Right. Like, is it just a band-aid for problems elsewhere?
Yeah, exactly. Cool. All right. Let's see this last one, which is from you, Ben. There it. Which one? It's the second template this time. Who knows why? Oh, okay. It's slightly off. Gosh.
Okay, so this is from my normal place I subreddit that I pull things from are classical music, and I'll respond to the actual post, but I was more interested in one of the comments. So the actual post is pretty simple. The title is what movie music composed in the classical genre do you think will stand the test of time? They clarify with one sentence, and would such pieces stand without the movies they were written for? Okay. Well, we'll start backwards, and then we'll get with the next thing, and we'll get to the comment that I'm interested in. Would any classic film score it's gonna will they stand the test of time, and without the reference to the movies that they're written for? I mean, that's already true, isn't it? You don't need to think of Indiana Jones to listen to the the Raiders theme, right? No, you don't. Or the Jaws theme. I've never seen Jaws. I know I need to see it, but have I ever seen Jaws? No. Do I, like almost everyone out there, know the Jaws theme, right? Yes. So I think the last part's answered pretty nicely for you. Now, granted, there are not a ton of scores that are like really great that went with movies that were like absolute failures, that have also that have kind of survived outside of the people who are like really into film scores. There are some like scores that are like that, like great music that are not great films that nobody knows. But generally, yeah, the movie has to have made some kind of like dent into public consciousness at some point when it came out, for most of these really popular scores. But ultimately, the films kind of become secondary to the music when you're talking about the music. I think so. All right, to the first part, what movie music composed in a classical genre do you think will stand the test of time? Well, I'm with some of the comments that people leave, which are, what do you mean by in the classical genre? Do you mean like Mozart? I don't know film scores that sound like Mozart are written in the classical style, but you mean like in the, I think this person, what they mean is in like an orchestral idiom, like not just electronics and not just like a pop soundtrack. So I'll answer on that. Well, pretty much John Williams. Other really popular film scores, I mean, I don't know, maybe Titanic, things like that. Anything that people will talk about now. I think those are probably things that people will still talk about in, I don't know, 50 years, probably along with some other things. I'm sure there's some classic Hans Zimmer scores. I don't know what the most classic Zimmer score is, because he's kind of changed his style over the years. Things like James Bond theme. I don't know, really popular non-John Williams themes. I don't know, Goldsmith. A lot of these probably Disney Renaissance films, I imagine, if our memory isn't too sullied by the live action remakes, as we were talking about earlier. Herman and Hitchcock's, that collaboration, pretty much all of those, Vertigo, North by Northwest, Psycho. Yeah, that's kind of my answer to that. Now, what I was mostly interested in, though, is a comment a little ways down. I think it's the third main comment, not counting like two comments. I don't know if Irving, you can find this. It's a really long text. The commenter is, I'm not going to pronounce this, but the person's name is Ulo Mai Mathein.
Yes. Okay. Got it. Mm-hmm.
Cool. So this person makes some comments that I disagree with. So this person says that, so So basically, although film music uses largely the same instrumentation as orchestral classical music, well, that's kind of too broad, right? I mean, orchestral classical music is an enormous thing, right? Although it's inspired in large part by the tradition of leitmotifs from Romantic era classical music, again, that we could really delve into that, and like our leitmotifs are really just a Romantic era thing. But anyway, this person says film music is now developed largely independent of contemporary classical music, and they think this is because film music is written, with conventions in mind based on the form of the film, instead of this kind of freer art that contemporary classical music is. Well, I push back and say that a lot of contemporary composers also have written for films. Lots of your favorite minimalist and post-minimalist composers have written film scores, maybe not the most popular ones. And I think that in some ways, film music is kind of at the forefront of newer but not hyper avant-garde innovations in music, right? Like, I wouldn't say that Hans Zimmer is hyper avant-garde, right? He's not. There are way more avant-garde classical composers out there, but are they doing what he's doing exactly? No. And he's doing something, well, I mean, everyone else is imitating him, but is that kind of a newer direction in music? Yes. So the person finally says that I can't imagine film scores standing without the films themselves, since film music listeners generally seek out that music having already watched a movie, and they're interested in the music because they seek a different way to experience that movie franchise. I get the impression that audiences for classical music and film music are mostly separate. Okay, so this is really what I'm interested in. Do people who are interested in film scores seek out film scores because they like the film itself and they want a new way of experiencing the film just by listening to the score itself? Is that true? I'm really not sure if that's true. I would say that amongst the people that I am around all the time, right, which is not like the average crowd, right? I'm around a bunch of musicians of various kinds all day. Amongst musicians, is that true? No, I think people listen to film music because they like it. And well, yes, maybe they've seen the film, maybe they haven't seen the film, but it's great music. And then a lot of times you'll listen to a great score and you're like, wow, I want to watch a movie now. I can think of lots of films where I've been like, I want to watch them because I know that. I don't watch the films. I know I've heard the music or I've heard about the music and I want to watch it for that reason. I don't listen to my favorite film scores because I want to I want to experience the film world in a new way. I'm more interested in how did when it's great music on its own, and it's music that I want to understand also how it works in the context of the film more. And yes, maybe it will enrich my understanding of the film once I really understand the score, especially if the music is really tied to the narrative and not just kind of atmospheric. So I don't know. I don't think it's true for me and for a lot of musicians. I'm really wondering if that's true though for the general audience, right? Do they listen to a film soundtrack because they want to, experience the film franchise that they love in a new way, or do they listen to it just because I heard it in the film and it was really cool? So a John, Hedwig's theme, right? John Williams. I watched first Harry Potter film and wow, that's a really cool melody. I want to go listen to that again. I don't know. I really don't know if the answer is that. And I'm also really interested in this person's idea that the audiences for classical music and film music are mostly separate. Now, I really wonder whether that's true. I would say, there are probably a lot of people who will listen to a film soundtrack and not listen to, I don't know, proper classical music. But are they really separate audiences, or is there just a ton of overlap, right? I mean, yes, certainly there are some people out there, anytime, like one of my bellwethers for gauging the mood of classical music is to look at comments on classic FM's their Facebook page, and we've talked about this before. But anytime it's anything about John Williams, yes, you'll see some of those people who are like, not classical music. John Williams is just a musical thief. Okay, and we can criticize classic FM for like obsessing about John Williams over all else. We can also kind of anyway, yeah, there are people out there who probably will only listen to classical music and not deign to listen to this inferior art form of film music. But really, how separate are these things? I think they're not as we've also talked about the phenomenon of people wanting to go see these live to projection concerts, right? You go see the orchestra plays and you get to see the film with the orchestra playing live. Of course, only the most popular films at the moment, mostly John Williams, or I guess last year I saw it was almost exactly a year ago today. I just got like the Facebook memory when I saw the live performance of Black Panther at Hollywood Bowl. That's how orchestras are making a lot of money, right? So audiences don't seem to think there's a huge distinction. A lot of the people I know who are, at least here in Los Angeles, maybe this isn't, I don't know if this is so much the same, like back where I was as an undergraduate in East Coast where nobody cares about, nobody knows about the film music industry. In LA, everybody knows about that. But I'm with a lot of musicians who are really, really serious about the classical world, but are also really into the film music world. To me, there's like almost, everyone out here does, all the best musicians out here do both. They play classical music and they play in the studios. I'll have a conversation, an hour-long conversation with someone about like the intricacies of Ravel's orchestration, and then later that day the person will send me, man, isn't this this really jazzy flute solo from Ratatouille? Like, isn't it such an awesome use of the flute? I'd be like, yeah, exactly. Like, so maybe it's more truth out here in Los Angeles that there's not really a distinction, but I don't know that there's this separation in film and classical music audiences that the person seems to think seems to think exists. So yeah, that's all I have on this one.
Cool. That was a good discussion, for sure. All right. I think that's it for our arguing with Reddit.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, or if you watching us live, thanks for joining us. We're always happy to have you, and definitely check us out on our Discord. Link is somewhere, or maybe it's not visible at the moment. It will be shortly if it's not currently visible, but you can find all the places where we stream, and you can also find a link to our Discord and to our locals page where you can support us. So again, thanks for joining us on Mixed Media Music Arguing with Reddit edition.
Awesome. Sweet. All right. Next we've got Nathan coming up, so let's transition. Here we go.
Mixed Media Gaming.
Hello and welcome to Mixed Media Gaming. Today is my review segment. I'll be reviewing the game From the Depths. It's quite the old game, but a lot has changed since this came out. I think it's improved a lot, and perhaps it regressed in some ways. But I have a lot to say about that. Before that, today, if you're watching the recorded version, we also did Irving's segment on why he moved out of New York and moved into Pennsylvania, and Ben's segment for Arguing with Reddit. So both super interesting segments. Watch those if you can. So I guess I'll get into it. Now, if you are watching the recorded version, let it be known that it's currently 11:18 p.m. and I don't know when this building closes that I'm in right now because I'm not in my dorm. So I'm going to be speedrunning. I actually happen to work downstairs. I work in a section of this building downstairs. They close at midnight. I suspect the building stays open despite this. I don't know though for sure. So I'm gonna be. Also, my camera's freaking out right now because hold up, I can fix that. Hold up, that laptop is dying. Okay, it's probably gonna be fixed now. All right, but yeah, I think I can maybe say most things that I'm trying to say within about 40 minutes. So, all right, let's go. Oh, actually, it's interesting. I think this is the longest show notes I've ever written, so maybe not. But
okay.
But it's a lot of like. I think my bullet point style might be a bit different. I usually do bullet points, right? I think I'm writing less down per bullet point, but I'm using more bullet points. But still, it's quite long. But anyways, let's get into it. So, From the Depths is a game developed by Brilliant Skies Ltd. Is the debut game and currently their only game released under them. Originally, Brilliant Skies was a single developer project. But the developer's name is Nick Smart. I believe he's a physicist by trade prior to being or a mathematician. I think it's a physicist. I think it's a physicist by trade before going into the game dev industry. I spelled physicist wrong in my notes. Physicist. All right. So since then, the company's expanded. According to their website, they have currently 15 plus staff. That staff includes people who are directly employed by Brilliant Skies and also contractors who work on the game every once in a while. I remember when they added their first developer years ago, first new developer, I should say. He was actually originally a modder for the game. And then, he did a lot of good work for the game. He added, if you know anything about the game, he added pistons to the game. That's what it was. He added pistons to the game, which, if you know about the game, that's kind of a big deal. He added that via mod, and, I guess, people were always saying, like, oh, it should be added to the team, perhaps jokingly, and then eventually it actually happened. So that's pretty cool. But anyway, so what actually is this game? So, in the shortest way I can say it, that's probably not the most descriptive, but gives you a general idea of what it is. The game is a voxel sandbox naval combat game with multiplayer and single player modes. So what does that look like? Well, I guess we'll get into that later. So I'd say I'm pretty qualified to review this game because right now it's currently my second most played game on Steam. I have a little over 400 hours on it, and no, I have not played this game in a long time. So at least I haven't played it. I haven't played it extensively in a long time. I have to play it to review it. Just see what's up, it's like that. But if I played it like I always did, I'm sure I'd have probably double that time at this point, maybe even more. And also, I've watched a lot of. I originally, before I bought the game, I watched a lot of YouTube videos on it, and that's how I really got interested in it. And I think actually, I think it might be the first game I ever bought on Steam. So yeah, this game came out in, I believe, 2013. And although if you look at Steam, it says 2020 because it's like the full release or whatever. I guess it was in beta or whatever for like a trillion years. That's nonsense, but whatever. And yeah, so as you can see in the video that Irving's showing, if you're on audio only, I guess it's tragic, but it's just a trailer, right? And you can see it's
live.
Mainly
that's how you see the video.
What'd you say?
Oh, you should join us live, then you can see the video.
True. But yeah, it's mainly set on the ocean, which is interesting for a sandbox type game. If you're familiar with other sandbox combat games like Robocraft, for example, that's a land-based game, right? From the Depths is a sea-based game, which is pretty interesting in my opinion. If you ever play something like Stormworks isn't combat-based necessarily, but it's that kind of thing where you build your ship, and it's on water. Now, that being said, they did add land vehicles, added wheels and stuff like that. Those are pretty janky. There are, as you can see in the trailer, you can make planes. You can make spaceships as well. There is space technically, although really there's nothing much there's nothing really crazy that goes on space. All that happens is, drag is reduced, gravity is reduced. I mean, it's just, anything. Okay, never mind. You get the point. But yeah, so as part of the general setting as well, the sort of lore of the game is that there are no known humans, I guess, that roam the world. Everything is AI controlled. So you, as your character, you are a robot. All the other ships that you'll be fighting are controlled by AI. And this is actually a pretty kind of a smart play on the developer's part of creating a game that didn't have to have, full crews were on ships and stuff like that. From an indie perspective, that sounds like kind of a nightmare to have, thinking about, imagine a ship without people on it. It's kind of weird if it was like, if it was meant to, if the lore is such that there are people who exist, right, and manage these ships and are supposed to, handle logistics and the weapon systems and whatnot and sailing the boat, whatever. But no, everything's just robots. So, I guess it could be more believable in that sense that every ship is a ghost ship because it's all AI controlled. So in terms of gameplay, there are a few modes in the game. So there's a main mode that I can't actually remember what it's called, but essentially it's an open world type mode where there are many factions, including your own. There is some very primitive diplomacy between factions. Really, it is: are you at war with them, or are you not at war with them? That's really all. That's really most of what it is. With a relation number representing how close you are to being at war with someone, how badly you pissed them off or whatever. And essentially, what you're doing is you're fighting for the entire map to destroy all factions. To destroy a faction, you have to defeat its boss. Every faction has a boss ship thing, essentially. Some of them are not ships, some of them are actually stationary structures that are hard to take down. Once you defeat that, the faction has been taken over. And so I think there are maybe 5 other factions in the game, at least in the original vanilla game. There are many. It's called the campaign mode. That's what it's called. There are many campaigns that they added to the game, but at least in the original one, I think there were like 5 factions. But all the campaigns pretty much work the same exact way. Now, you're fighting over these resource gathering places. There are certain areas in the open world environment where you can gather resources that you can use to build your ship. So these resource gathering places are very important. These are the sort of central focal points of the game alongside the boss areas. And it's pretty much what you end up fighting over. So it ends up being a consistent sort of attack and defend type thing, right? So some faction might attack you, anytime, and then you attack them for their resource gathering areas and whatnot. There's also the adventure mode, which is kind of an interesting sort of mode where it's also open world, and it sort of lets you play at your own pace, whereas the campaign mode sort of just throws you in and you just kind of you're up against the AI and it's not really, you can set like a difficulty mode before you start playing the game, but from there then on if you're getting destroyed, you're getting destroyed. If you're doing great, you're doing great, right? In the adventure mode, essentially the way it works is enemies will spawn at random. They'll attack you. They'll spawn at various, just not in front of you exactly. Just spawn at distance. They'll attack you. You have to defend yourself from them. You defeat them. That's how you get resources. And then you can choose to either there are these portals located around the world, and you can choose to either go through a red portal, which will bring you to a sort of harder world where the ships that spawn tend to be more advanced, or I think the alternative is, I think, the blue portal. There's another color portal, which will bring you to a easier sort of world. So, you can sort of play at your own pace in the adventure mode. It's not really, too hard unless you challenge yourself. I know some people do runs where they only go through red portals. The moment they see it, they have to go through one. That's part of the challenge. But, if you play with, no, really rules at all, then it's essentially a more lax way of playing the game. It's also the story mode, which is a series of different challenges that it puts you through. Essentially, it gives you a scenario. So, maybe it sets you up with this one ship. You have a limited amount of resources to defeat the ship. You have to build something before you start the game. You load it in, and that's it. You have to defeat challenge by challenge. And the reason it's called story mode is because it goes through the story of the factions, right? So it's like it's a progression in that sense. And there's also multiplayer for these modes. I'm not actually sure about the story mode. I've never seen multiplayer in story mode, but at least in the campaign mode there is multiplayer, and it's also a creative mode where you can do whatever you want in your own sandbox, and that also has multiplayer. So I feel like that was a pretty bad explanation, but I stuttered a lot. But hopefully you get the general idea. Initial impressions for me, well, I went in with some knowledge. So I watched YouTubers play the game for quite a bit of time before I actually bought the game, like I said before. And this definitely drastically changed my experience when compared to other people who just jumped in for the first time. So if you were to just jump in, without any sort of prior knowledge, what you find is that there is an extremely high learning curve. So if you check out the Steam reviews and you filter by all the negative Steam reviews, 99% of it is this game is too hard to start with. The common things that people say are things like the camera controls. When you're building things, the camera controls are not intuitive at the start. This is intentional. So actually, a lot of people don't know is that if you press, I think, F3, you can change the controls to a much more intuitive thing that pretty much anyone will be able to use. The issue is that this is not the most efficient. It is the most familiar way of doing things, but it's not the most efficient way of building. So the game by default gives you this sort of odd camera control thing when you're building that is more efficient, but is not as intuitive to us. Now, once you learn it, it's great. You can build much faster than you ever be able to if you're using the sort of standard what you expect type of camera that is not enabled by default. A lot of people don't know this exists, so they end up trying to struggle through the default build camera thing. They say, I can't do it, even though I don't really think that it takes that long to master. I don't know if you remember that. Do you?
Oh, you froze.
Huh? Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah? Did you answer? I didn't hear.
No, I didn't hear what you said because you froze exactly as you asked the question.
Oh, I said, do you recall the build camera?
Yes, I do remember that. I do remember. I haven't played the game in like a long time,
It's been years.
Yeah. But yes, I do remember the awkward build camera.
Right. Yeah.
But it is good. It is the correct camera.
Exactly. You just gotta struggle through it at first, and then it turns out better. But I think the game doesn't explain that to you. so most people just think this game just has a bad camera. It's kind of it just seems like, why would they do that? It's very, very odd. Why not just go with the standard thing that people do in sandbox games? But makes sense in the end. Another thing that people complain about is just the sheer amount of stuff that there is in the game, the amount of items you can place on your ship. There are so many different types of blocks and items, and so many different types of things. To explain how granular this game is, in a game like Robocraft, for example, if you want to place a weapon on your vehicle, you go to your inventory, you pick the weapon, and you just click on your little robot thing, right? And it places it wherever. In Robocraft, in From the Depths, in general, all the weapons you'll be making are custom made, and what that means is that they'll be made. The weapons you put on your ship are made out of individual blocks. So you'll have an ammo loader block, for example, a barrel block, and there are different types of barrel blocks. You have your auto loaders, stuff like this, right? You have your even down to like on a cannon, the type of shell that's produced by the cannon that is shot, I guess I should say. You can customize the components of that round. So how much gunpowder it has, right? What's the tip of the bullet look like? You have really granular things like this. And to a new player, all that stuff all at once is just really overwhelming, and I understand that. And the third thing that a lot of people complain about is that they just can't make things that look good because there are I say there are probably the two big reasons people play this game. There is for the, I guess, more competitive nature of it, and trying to create the best, most efficient ship, and there's also for trying to make aesthetically pleasing things, and there's also it's probably on a spectrum, people in between and stuff like that. I probably fall somewhere in between. And if you're in it for the aesthetics, yeah, I'm sure there are people who are naturally talented at making ships in front of the depths look really good. But for me, I don't really know how people make these crazy looking ships. They're just magical to me. I can't. I'm not on that level. So my ships look pretty subpar. But a lot of people, really struggle with that part. Now, it is true the game. There is a lot of merit to these complaints. The game is very complex. Damage calculations alone, that is, how much if you have some weapon round and it hits some part of a vehicle, what happens? How many blocks break? How much damage does it do to blocks? There are, the damage calculations alone are kind of complicated. So, firstly, there are 5 different types of damage. There's kinetic damage, thump damage, laser damage, explosive damage, and EMP damage. These factor into, what actually happens. What's the ending effect when a round connects with some structure? There are also other factors like the HP of the block, the angle of impact, the armor of the block, which is different than the HP, is smoke present, and the neighboring blocks of that block. So if you have blocks, directly behind it or to the sides of it, that all matters and affects what happens. So if you're really reading into this, you might be like, wow, I'm way in over my head. I'm new to this game, and I got to think about all these things. And you don't really need to, but I'll get to that later. And as someone with 400 hours in the game, I still don't have all this stuff memorized. I still would have to look up okay, how exactly does the neighboring blocks affect certain shells? And there are literal videos of people creating different cannons and just testing it against different types of armor, different configurations of armor, I should say, various block placed in various configurations around each other to create, the sort of the best armor in a given amount of space, using some given amount of resources. Same goes for cannons. People try to create we'll just do test lineups of various cannons with slightly different variations and seeing which one actually shreds this type of armor the best, stuff like that. There are also things like certain types of items are very complex, like the PID controller. If you don't know, PID is I assume most people don't know what this is, but it stands for proportional integral derivative. Okay? This is a system used in real life to it's kind of hard to explain, but what I'll say is the application in this game is, let's say you have, for example, a submarine you make in this game, and you want to control the submarine's depth. You want to say, I want it to be 20 meters below sea level, for example. Now, you can create a simple system in from the depths where you say, okay, if the craft is above our target destination, then go down. If it's below, go up. Right, simple things like this. The issue is you get problems where if your pitch control or your elevation control is very aggressive, you might end up overshooting that 20-meter mark over and over and over again. You're sort of bouncing back and forth, up and down, way past where you're supposed to be. So here comes PID controllers, which is supposed to mitigate the amount of overshoot, essentially, prevents sort of feedback loops from happening, stuff like that. People also use this for airplanes and sort of giving airplanes a steady roll and preventing them from wiggling back and forth, left and right. The issue is if you try to place down a PID controller and say, oh, I want a stable craft, for example. I'm training a submarine. I want it to be stable. Well, the formula for PID stuff, well, as the name suggests, it includes integrals and derivatives. Now, unless you're taking calculus, this means nothing to you, right? So instantly you've barred a bunch of people from actually using this from knowing what this means. Knowing any other stuff going on means. And for me, I've taken 2 calculus courses in college. That doesn't mean that I want to do calculus. It doesn't really mean I want to play this game and think, okay, all right, if I want to make the submarine be stable, let me bust out some paper and do some calculus. I don't really want to do that. So now to the devs' credits, they do
not an educational game.
Actually, honestly.
Forces you to do your math homework.
In some sense, it actually is. I could see it being used as an educational tool in terms of things like physics, for example. Although I don't think that's the intention of the PID controller. It just is that complicated, unfortunately. But if you do hover over the PID controller in where you select it, rather, it does give you a nice wall of text explaining how it works. in a way that it doesn't require.
Like there are
that you
lots
have,
of walls of text in the menus
Yes.
in this game.
there are lots of walls of text to read to understand many things. Because if you're trying to explain what a PID controller is to someone who doesn't know, who perhaps haven't even heard of a derivative before, right? It's going to require a lot of text probably to understand how the different values, because you can edit the PID controller parameters yourself. There are 3 variables you can edit, set them to various values, and that'll affect how well it actually works, right? Because you can put a PID controller on something and it just doesn't work. You actually need to fine tune the values to get something that works. So it has to try to explain like, well, we're not going to explain mathematically what's going on here, but this value tends to cause this react. If you increase this value, it tends to elicit these sorts of reactions with the amount of feedback that's generated by the PID controller and stuff like that. Which is great, but also for new players, it really is not comforting to look at. For them to be like, oh, I want to stabilize my craft, I got to read this wall of text, and it's still a lot of learning. It's still a lot of learning involved in that. So. Yeah. That being said, there are extensive interactive tutorials. The story mode is really a good sort of tutorial type thing because it forces you down a linear progression where essentially you don't have to know everything to play the first story mission. You don't have to know much at all. You just need to know the very basics. And even outside of the story things, there are tutorials that go really in depth into these specific things. So, for example, creating your own custom shells, there's a tutorial that'll go really in depth. It won't go so in depth that you know exactly what shells are good for what armor. As you can see, actually, in this video is quite literally an armor test. Is what I'm looking at right now. There is space armor.
Looked up.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like a bunch of different materials spaced up. Anyways, there are a lot of tutorials, but they won't tell you everything. So you still have to do these sorts of tests and whatnot. But here's my recommendation if you're playing this game. If you want to enjoy this and you don't want to be overwhelmed by the amount of stuff, don't jump in like that. So, I jumped in like that because I watched the YouTube videos on it for so long that I was already well primed to deal with a lot of it. I already knew a bunch of stuff. I would also suggest don't search for answers online for your questions because you'll end up finding some wiki page from the Devs Wiki or some Reddit posts where you end up going down a rabbit hole of how to do an integral, for example, and you don't want to do that. So don't do that. I think that honestly, because most of this game is physically based, not that it's necessarily realistic, but it is intuitive to us, right? So what happens when you stack armor close together versus further away is somewhat intuitive to us. So you don't necessarily need to know exact numbers, exact values. I would say let your intuition guide you at the start, and then later when you're more comfortable with how things are going, then you can dive deeper into the sort of specifics of it. And you get very technical with it. But at the start, don't worry about specifics. Don't worry about is this cannon I'm making the greatest cannon ever or whatever. Let intuition guide you. I think that's a good idea. Also, restrict your item choice. There are so many items in the game, as you can see in the video. Oh, no, you can't see anymore. But now you can. On the left side, there are a whole bunch of different tabs, and each tab has a whole array of different blocks that you can choose from. That now actually, by default, the game restricts you. You cannot use every block in the game at the start. That being said, on the bottom, it'll say you're in I don't know what it's called. It's not called beginner mode. I'll say you're in beginner mode or whatever, and then you can press a button and it'll go with advanced mode and it'll give you a few more blocks you can choose from, and then you can keep leveling up that thing just by clicking whatever button to essentially expand the array of items you can use. This is a good idea because it lets you first it starts you knowing what blocks do I need to get started, right? And once you've mastered those, then you can go on to the next ones and the next ones and so on. The issue is I think a lot of people just go to the max level immediately and say, I'll just try every block. That's what I did because once again, I already knew what was going on. So for me, it didn't feel great to start off, with just a few primitive blocks. I think another issue is someone might see something cool. For example, I think maybe I don't know if this is true. Maybe lasers are restricted. You can't use lasers in from the start, with the beginner mode or whatever it's called on, right? So you want to use lasers. Some people might be tempted to just crank it up to the max just to use one item. You know what I'm saying? And the item might not actually be that complicated. It might just be that you disagree with the developer. The developer thinks that you're not capable of using this item, but you think you are. So you end up unrestricting everything. And now, well, you got access to the laser. You also got access to all these other things now that are sort of like visual noise that you should probably ignore for now. But it's hard to do so. And so, you might try to use them. Like the PID block. Probably, the stability thing is generally so things don't look stupid. Really, things will function even with usually, even if you have nasty, overshooting of things. But things will generally function. A lot of times, just aesthetics. It kind of looks dumb if your submarine's bobbing up and down and stuff like that. Although it doesn't really matter oftentimes. And another nice thing is that you should use prefabs. So the game comes with what are called prefabs, which are essentially a collection of blocks that you can place down at once. So, for example, instead of making a cannon yourself from scratch, there are a whole selection of cannons, pre-built cannons that you can select and place down. Yeah, they're not going to be the greatest cannons ever because they're not going to give you the greatest cannons ever because you got to learn how to make your own good cannons, right? But they're going to be something, so you don't have to think about making your own cannons. You can use them. They're subpar, but they work well enough, and you can use them as an example to learn from them, look at them, and stuff like that. So I think this game has really good potential for further discovery. Like once you get past the initial phase, you're no longer feels so daunting anymore. There is so much to learn that in 400 hours, I feel like I've just scratched the surface of what there is to know. Definitely a lot of people who know a lot more than me about what goes on in this game, about good strategies and whatnot, about certain things. Like for example, I don't really deal too much with lasers, for example, so I don't really know, the most efficient way to make them, things like that. But I do enjoy cannons, so I'm much more knowledgeable about that. There's so many paths you can go with in this game that it feels like no matter who you are, you'll find something you like doing in the game. If you don't like making boats, you can make planes. If you don't like making planes, you make helicopters, spaceships, submarines, tanks, etc. You make weird hovercraft abominations. It does not matter. You can do anything. And I think I really like how the game lets you sort of play your way with all the different modes and all the different things you can do in the game. Even if certain things aren't very practical, right? For example, hovercraft, they don't tend to be the most practical things ever. You use a lot of energy just to make you hover off the water for what reason, really? It just kind of looks cool. that is the real reason. Plus some other benefits, like you can tend to be able to go faster because there's no water resistance and whatnot, but yeah. Another issue I have with the game though is that because the lore has it such that there are robots everywhere. Also, there's an ad playing on the screen okay, it's gone.
Is Irving frozen?
Yes, my camera died, so I'm going to replace the battery in a moment. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Go ahead though.
Okay. Well, side effect of the entire world being a robot-infested world is that there are no robots that walk around except your own player. So it feels incredibly empty. And in fact, it doesn't make a lot of sense in certain cases where certain ships, clearly there are like walkways and you're meant to, like they have interiors, like you're meant to be able, like it looks like as if something is meant to be able to walk around in there. Now, you can, I guess, but it feels somewhat unsettling that there's just nothing there. I think, it'd be one thing if the lore was such that, I don't know, humans once existed in this world and they were, they all died out and the ships were made for human ships and then they got repurposed by AI or whatever. So they still have like, esoteric, walkways and whatnot, right? But I don't think that's actually part of any lore. So, maybe for at least certain, I know it's the lore for certain ships. They're, I'm fairly certain, essentially not made with the idea of beings walking around them, right? That's something that's kind of weird. Now, that being said, I believe there was some talk of fixing that. Brilliant Skies announced, years ago, a sort of almost pseudo successor, not quite, to From the Depths. They called it, I forget what it was called. it had a name. Oh, Forgotten Shores. That's what it's called. It was called Forgotten Shores. The idea was that it would be an offshoot, sort of, From the Depths, that would be a experimenting ground for ideas that would eventually go to From the Depths. So, things like, for example, humans walking around. That they would put that in the Forgotten Shores game, test it out there. If it went well, they might put that in From the Depths. When I heard of that, I thought that was the worst idea I've ever heard in my life. Because at the time, I think he was a solo dev, or maybe he had one or two other employees. But my thought was that, the amount of work that is required to maintain two games, even if one of them is not being developed as crazily as the other one, is going to be an issue. And to this day, the game does not exist. So there's that. They renamed it to after Catalyst, which is a homage to a mod from the depths of the same name. I have no idea if it's still being worked on or not. I'm actually not sure. But the ideas that proposed were very cool. I remember on their forum that they used to have. I don't think the forum still exists, sadly, although I could be wrong. That people were suggesting ideas, and there were a lot of ideas that went through that seemed to be very promising as a lot of these issues of emptiness would be solved with this successor. But I'm afraid it never came out, and I don't know the status of it. So that's kind of sad. And yeah, another thing I want to touch up on before I only have 10 minutes left, so real quickly, is the music. So the soundtrack is very long. The soundtrack is 105 tracks long. I would say that each song averages maybe 3 minutes. So it's not we're talking short songs here. In total, the soundtrack is 4 hours long. So yeah, roughly 3 minute average or something like that, with 105 tracks. The music appears in the game similar in a way to Minecraft, right? Where it's music appears, it's gone for a long time, appears again. It's gone for a long time, appears again. It's not continuous music like a lot of games have. It's just sparsely put in there. And I actually think it is. The music they did not have 105 tracks to begin with, but since then they added this music. It sounds surprisingly professional for I won't say a small game, because the game has received many has received tons of purchases at this point. I don't probably tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands. I'm not actually sure, but I think tens of thousands at least. So they can afford to hire composers and whatnot, but still it feels, even for indie, even for relatively successful indie games, the music feels oddly professional. I think because the instruments sound good, potentially because they're real instruments and not digital instruments, which are not featured in a lot of games. so it feels sort of fresh in a way. Even if a lot of the music is kind of for example, there's a faction called the Deepwater Guard, and they're kind of stereotypical pirates, and the music is kind of it's pirate music. It's it's not anything. There's nothing particularly crazy. It just sounds like pirate music. But I feel all the music also with the different factions, even though they're very different styles, they all end up working together with the general vibe of the game. And I feel they all sort of take a backseat in a way. They're not really the forefront of the game at all. They tends to I can't explain why. I don't know why. But it feels to me that when I'm playing the game, the music can come in and it's I only subconsciously notice it, until I actually notice it, and I'm oh yeah, that's good. But I feel I've had I tend to notice it late, but the effects have already begun of me subconsciously noticing it, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's the music. I don't really have much to say about it. Especially because a lot of the music was added recently, and I haven't played much recently, so I haven't listened to all the music. It's 4 hours long, so it's gonna take a long time of playing the game to actually listen to all the music, given that it does not play at all times, and it's somewhat randomized, so you're not gonna get all separate 105 tracks in a row. I guess some duplicates and stuff like that. But yeah, so to wrap up, in general, I think it's a great game with room for improvement for sure. I didn't get a lot to talk about a lot of things, but I think my general impression is that the idea is great. The execution, especially towards the beginning of the game's life, was a bit sketchy. Since then, it's improved a lot, but I still see, there's a lot of room for improvement, definitely. It's been received widely, very positively, has very positive reviews on Steam, with 8,000 reviews on Steam. I think, it's likely going to be a game I play for a long time to come. There's so much stuff to do that it always feels like there's more stuff I could do. I never feel very bored with the game. So, yeah, if you want to play it, you can get on Steam or Games Rocket. But, yeah, that's all.
Awesome. Yeah, I am still frozen because I don't know where my batteries are because my room has exploded and not set up yet.
So I'm just trying to look at about the music, and I can't find that much about it. But it's people on the official forum talking, saying at least like the original release of the music. The music, none of the music was written for. It's all pre-existent music they took. Like it wasn't written for the game. Okay.
Yeah, actually, I remember now you say that. When I first started playing, when the music came on, it would say have credits. Like credits would appear when the track turned on. This person made this music or whatever. I never really thought too much about it, but yeah, I guess that makes sense to me now. And I can also see it being kind of generic-ish music, but it definitely worked. Like they definitely chose the right tracks for the game, at least with the starting stuff. I don't actually know if that starting stuff actually still exists in the game. I feel like I don't remember hearing the song that plays when you open the game for the first time that I used to hear before. Either I just missed it or they removed it, which is kind of sad because it's kind of it's very I don't know, it's very nostalgic. But yeah. Mm.
Cool. Awesome. You want to take us out then? Outro us, Nathan?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Thank you for watching the Mixed Media Podcast. If you'd like to watch more, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube, follow us on Twitch or any platform. If you want to see all our platforms that we're on, you can go to mixedmediapodcast.com. You'll find everywhere we are. If you want to talk to us individually, you can join our Discord. That's definitely the best way of contacting us. We have good discussions there. We also have the Midjourney bot there. If you don't know what that is, join. You'll find out. It's great. Anything else I should say?
Shout out to 99 Crime and Rob Sharma for supporting us. I think 99 Crime is actually listening on our Discord. Which we got a few uses of that function here and there. There he is. I'm here. Great show. Awesome. Thanks for being around, 99 Crime. If you wanted to be able to listen to the show like he is, audio only, which if you're traveling or whatever, saves bandwidth, is easy to stream. You can join our Discord. We are streaming the audio of the podcast live on there, and the chat is connected. So just like 99 Crime just did in the chat, we'll see the chat if you're on Discord streaming the audio of the podcast. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Right. All right. Well, thanks for watching.
Have a great week.
Yeah, thanks for watching and listening.
Look, tell a man no trouble, I don't want beef, man, I just want vibes. Big man like me, no need for the telephone hype. I got too much getting online. One rule, then dead I'm on site. Wrong move, I bet they gon' ride. No need for the telephone hype, nah. No need for the snoozing. Big whip outside, I'm cruising. Big stick inside, no losing. Better watch out for the snake and Judas is. Don't ask them who this is. I bet they know what I'm moving in. I bet I show it into a dim. How you hate and then lose again? How you hating my vibes? Why you wasting my time? Getting hype on my line. Tell a man I don't want feedback, I just want relax. Brand new whip, two-tone, I need that brand new hit. Like lean back, brand